Hello, welcome to Planet 40k. Today we're going to take a look at the Doom Scythe from the Necron Codex. Before we do, guys, can I just grab your attention for 30 seconds just to push a new podcast? The podcast is called The Nerd Bunker. This is their ad.
Please remain seated. You are now entering the Nerd Bunker.
So that's the Nerd Bunker, available on all podcast services. So give them a follow if you're interested in that. Now back to the video. It's one of our Necron flyers from the book. You can take 2 flyers per detachment. So if you did want more, you're going to need to pay CP for those detachments. So coming in at 10 power level or 200 points. It will stay at 200 points as there's no upgrades here. So the Doom Scythe comes with the following keywords. It goes into any dynasty, it's a vehicle, it can fly, and it's an aircraft. So as always, some of those keywords will be interacting with stratagems that we'll discuss later in the video. So as for the stat line for the Doom Scythes, movement goes from 20 inch to 50 inch, so you have to have a minimum movement of 20 inch. Weapon skill 6+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 6, toughness 6, wounds 12, attacks 3, leadership 10, and a 3+ save. Now this flyer does degrade when damaged, so when it's down to 6 wounds it's going to lose 10 inch of movement along with a point of ballistic skill, and the attacks become D3. And then once it's down to 3 wounds or less, it loses another 10 inch, another point of ballistic skill, dropping it down to a 5+, and drops down to a single attack. Now one thing to keep an eye out for is your movement itself, as you can't be landed on any models. And of course you are forced to move within those perimeters, so a minimum of 20 like I mentioned. So sometimes this can force you off the board, which thankfully doesn't destroy the flyer this edition, as it puts you into strategic reserves. Now it's quite advisable that you start your flyers off the board in strategic reserves, especially with the Doom Scythe being a pretty powerful gun unit and only toughness 6, so it will be targeted instantly. So let's talk about the abilities then. Living Metal, giving it loss wound at the start of the turn, pretty standard. Command Protocols, it is also standard, although you're going to need to be within 6 inches of a character to even get the buff, so it's quite unlikely that you're going to be getting this, so don't bank on it. Into the more unique stuff, it's got Supersonic, so each time a model makes a normal move or advances or falls back, you have to first pivot the unit on the spot up to 90 degrees. This is not considered any movement, it's just a pivot. Then it moves in a straight line and it cannot be pivoted again this turn. So already as mentioned, just be aware of your pivots and movements, plan ahead a few turns because you can get stuck, and flying off the table will make you miss out on a turn of shooting for the unit. The flyer can explode, so when it is destroyed you roll a d6 before removing it from play, and on a 6 it explodes, and each unit within 6 inches will suffer d3 mortal wounds. It's got hard to hit. Each time a ranged attack is made against the flyer, subtract 1 from the attacker's hit roll. Pretty good. I mean, this is going to be needed as your flyer is slightly weaker than a standard vehicle at toughness 6, so even mass bolter fire will take it out of the sky. Then finally it's got Airborne. You cannot declare a charge with this unit, and it can only be chosen as a target of a charge if the unit making the charge can fly. Also, you can only fight with this model if it's within engagement range of any enemy units that can fly. So that's the abilities. Now that airborne ability does help in a way, like comparing it to say a Doomsday Arc. They can be caught in combat and potentially taken out pretty quickly, whereas only enemies that can actually fly can go attacking your flyer. So that in itself has some sort of defense. So onto the weapons then. The Doom Scythe is equipped with a heavy death ray and a twin Tesla destructor. So let's dive into the heavy death ray then. So this is your big gun. It's 36 inch range, heavy 3, strength 12, minus 4 AP, and the damage is D3 plus 3. So I love that it's a heavy 3 and not something silly like a D3 or a D6. I take that flat 3 every day of the week. Ballistic skill 3 on average should net you around 2 hits out of the 3, and I'd always command reroll that miss, as this is a big weapon not to be wasting shots. This would wound anything toughness 6 or less on 2s and anything else on 3s. The minus 4 AP is pretty much leaving only in-run saves, and D3 plus 3 damage a pop is an average of 5 damage. So if you were to get all 3 wounds through, you've got a max damage potential of 18 wounds in a single round of shooting from this one weapon alone, so use it wisely. The second weapon is a twin Tesla destructor. It's a 36 inch range, heavy 10, strength 7, no AP and 1 damage. Now each time you make an attack with this weapon, any unmodified hit rolls of a 6 will score 2 additional hits. So a nice little anti-infantry / elite weapon. Strength 7 is probably overkill for infantry, but the lack of AP and damage won't really do enough to vehicles and monsters, so stick to the infantry units or possibly weak fast attack options that are trying to push you off objectives early. 10 shots hitting on 3s will average you around 6.7 hits, then of course any 6s will explode, scoring 2 additional hits. So hopefully 1 or 2 of your 10 shots will pop, giving you some extra shots there. You're going to be wounded on 3s against most units that you're gunning down, and possibly 2s against factions such as Eldari, Drukhari. Again, that lack of AP isn't great, so killing Marines is going to be tricky, and maybe you'll get a dead Marine or 2 if you're lucky. Now, I'm not a fan of Tesla this edition. I know some of the subscribers are and have ways of making it work, but against the current meta I feel you need AP, and 2 wound Marines with 3+ armor save isn't good odds for your Tesla to take them down. So that's the 2 weapons. Now of course the Tesla Destruction is merely an appetizer for your heavy death ray, so I won't be too down about that. It's a pretty decent bonus weapon to have. Now looking at the Dynasty codes, the Mefrit Dynasty code gives both of your weapons a 39-inch range, which isn't bad, especially as your weapon's going to probably be targeting completely different units, so the range is actually good. The -1 AP if you're firing at half range will really aid that Tesla weapon too. The Zwalkan Dynasty code gives you a 5+ feel no pain roll against mortal wounds, not bad for those smites and whatnot. Also the code allows for a single reroll to wound per unit, so if you do manage to fluff your wound roll, which is possible if you're targeting a toughness 7 model, then it's a free reroll. They have Empiric Damping for 1 CP, which is a stratagem which virtually gives you Deny the Witch on a 4+, which also isn't bad, especially as you're probably going to be up the field. Now the Saltec code, as always, has its value, but mainly in the stratagem itself, not so much the code, because the code isn't going to really help the flyer. So the stratagem allows models, such as a single warrior, to target an enemy unit that you want rid of. Then after targeting it, the rest of your army get a +1 to hit against that targeted unit for the rest of the phase. This then puts your Doom Scythe on a +1 to hit, giving him 2s to hit, which can be mega. And I always mention this, but pair it with a tryout Stalker with the targeting relay. You obviously have to do it separately because the Stalker isn't actually a part of the Dynasty. Once he's fired as well, not only are you going to be a 2+ to hit, but you're rerolling 1s on top. Now this does cost 2 CP, and it does involve having a Stalker too if you want to play it that way, but it is an almost guaranteed way of getting your 3 shots to hit. Then you can also save the command rerolls to wound as well. As for going custom, the best codes to suit your flyer would be Superior Artisans for a single reroll to wound, and then there's the Masters of the Martial, which is the same thing but for the hit roll. They're the only 2 I'd look at from that list, and then from the second list the only real option here is the Healthy Paranoia, giving a 3-inch range buff to your ranged weapons. It's probably the only one I'd use. To be honest, I'd just go for the Mefrit code, just to get the extra AP for your Tesla weapon and a bit more range. In fact, as far as codes go, they've got such a minor effect on your Doom Scythe, I'd maybe not even look at trying to get a code based on it and just look at the rest of your army. You would do anyway, I guess, but I usually try and aid the unit in question for the reviews, but it is quite minimal here, so I wouldn't actually bother. As for stratagems, Techno-Oracular Targeting for 1 CP allows one of your hit rolls to auto wound. Now if you are wounding on 3s, I'd maybe use this as it's 100% effective, whereas a command reroll isn't. Now of course you might not even have failed the roll in the first place, it is a question of how bad you want to wound the enemy unit. Stellar Alignment Protocol for 1 CP lets you have full wounds on your damage table for the purpose of movement and ballistic skill statistics for the turn. So it doesn't actually give you the wounds of course, it's just to prevent you from being bracketed for that round. Curse of the Fair One for 1 CP lets you auto explode rather than rolling for a 6 to try and explode. Now if your flyer is taken down near enemy units, then let it go boom. Atavistic Instigation for 1 CP done in the shooting phase. When selecting your death rate, if there are enemy units within 3 inches of the targeted unit, then that unit has 2 options. They can either brace or duck for cover. Now if the unit does brace and it's not a vehicle or monster, it will suffer D3 mortal wounds. And if the unit decides to duck for cover, then until the end of the turn you subtract 1 from their attack's characteristics, and the unit can also not fire Overwatch or set to defend until the end of the turn. Bit of a weird one that one, but it can assist in certain situations. Malevolent Arcing for 1 CP used when firing your Tesla weapon. After making attacks, roll a d6 for any enemy units within 6 inches of the target, and on a 4+, that unit suffers a mortal wound. So this one is handy against those clumped up armies that castle up, but again it's quite situational. So that's all the stratagems you can use with the Doom Scythe. And honestly, there's not really much other synergy to speak of within the book, so I guess it's time to conclude the unit. So first we've got to talk about aircrafts. Now, aircrafts have the bonus of speed and being harder to hit, and also only enemy units that have fly can attack them in combat, and you can also just simply fly away as well. They cannot control any objectives, which is a huge part of this edition, and when you're sinking 200 points into a unit that can't touch objectives, it's got to find other ways to have value within your army. Now it does have that heavy death ray, that's probably the only reason you're bringing it, but it has 3 competitors within the Codex. Now it's the Doomsday Ark, the Canoptic Doomstalker, and the Heavy Locust Destroyers. Now all 3 of those have their own pros and cons, and we can argue till the cows come home about which one is better. But bottom line is all 3 of those not only synergize with other units within the Codex, but they can also secure objectives and be scoring you points throughout the game. which is crucial. They all have their own versions of the big guns. I mean, they're only strength 10 on those units, not 12. But do you even really need 12? Not really. I mean, I think there's some fortifications at a toughness 10, but that's about it. You're wounded on 3s at worst regardless. The Ark and the Stalker have resiliency with either in-run saves or quantum shielding, and the Locust Heavies are mobile and infantry, so they can get into cover and still benefit from other units such as Chronomancers, giving the Chronomatron, giving them an in-run. Now, one other thing that goes in favour of the Doom Scythe is that maybe your heavy support options are full, so having the extra big gun within the Flyers role doesn't interact with that. So it simply can be used as air support rather than your big gun. So in smaller games, I'd definitely avoid using one. You won't need it. Just get one of the other options. But in the bigger epic games, yeah, why not? Fill a flyer spot to add to your firepower. Now, I've used this phrase in a recent video, but I'd say this unit is more of a luxury unit rather than the foundation of your list. Also, the main weapon on the flyer is a much shorter range than the other heavies within the book. It's only 36-inch range. It's still a good range, but not as good. And as mentioned already, no quantum shielding, no invuln, so it's going to go down quick, toughness 6. So as for its rating, I'm going to give the Doom Scythe a Planet 40k rating of 2.5 out of 5. It's not a go-to option for me. Doomsday Arks and Doomstalkers do it much better and are much more resilient at the role. Now, the flyer isn't bad by any means, I just feel like it's under par in comparison to those other units within the book itself. And that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Remember to subscribe if you're new and like the video on your way out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.